Um, how did you get the idea to cover this in your documentary?
Well, I actually had a friend at the University of Detroit Mercy where I teach who lives in the Corktown neighborhood, and she heard about the people who were taking care of the field, and she told me about it. And I was looking for a documentary to produce at the time, and as soon as I heard about it, I thought, oh, wow, this is too great of a story to let this one go by. So I started doing some research and trying to figure out ways to contact these people that I had no idea who they were. So I just had to figure out how to get in touch with them and then to persuade them to let me do the film.
So what was their? I was curious. What was their reaction when you started talking to the grounds crew?
Well, that was the thing. It was hard to get in touch with them at first. It took me probably a good month to find the right name, Tom Derry, to get in touch with. He's the head guy of the grounds crew, as you see in the movie. And it took quite a bit of work to get him to say yes. Tom did not want publicity. He was afraid that any publicity they got would make the city more angry and make the police more likely to come kick them out. So I had to persuade him to let me do this. And it took a little bit of convincing to get it done.
Well, there's some really interesting moments in the documentary where they're, nervous about the city or police coming around. I imagine there were. I mean, you caught some on film. I imagine they dealt with a lot more than that.
Well, the sad thing is there was another great incident that happened on July 4th in 2012. It was a really hot day. It was up in the 90s. They had a great barbecue going. There were probably 70 people there. It was packed, and people were playing baseball, just cooking out. And this big police van pulled up, and I'm there with my camera. And this whole van full of police officers gets out, and they're wearing not just their blue uniforms, they're wearing SWAT gear. Oh. And we're all sitting there thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? And one of them walks up to Joe Michnick, one of the guys that you've also seen in the film, and he's like, hey, are you the guys that take care of the field? And he goes, yes, we are. And he goes, well, if you ever have any trouble, just give us a call. Here's my card. And I thought I was rolling video on that, but I wasn't. My camera must have hit stop when I thought I hit start. Otherwise, I would have had that in the film, but it was a great moment. So other than that one day, the police really never came back and bothered them. They really just kind of accepted the notion this is good for the city, and if they're keeping this place clean, that means drug dealers and other people aren't going to be hiding out in those tall weeds, stashing their stuff, and all kinds of other crime couldn't take place in those tall weeds because everybody can see straight across.
Right. Well, there are a lot of great stories in the film. Was it hard to edit down?
Oh my goodness, that was by far the hardest thing of all, was trying to figure out, and it's 90 minutes long, I was trying to get it down to 60, so that should tell you something, but I have probably close to 150 hours worth of footage, and I squeezed it down to 90 minutes, so it was really tough picking out the best of the best.
So what have been your responses viewings of your film?
Oh man, it's been so cool. People have just, first of all, everybody has come up to me afterwards, and usually there's a long line of people that want to talk, and they all say, oh, well, when I was there, I remember when this happened, and my father did this, and I remember when I went there with my wife, and everybody wants to share stories, so everybody that's seen it has some kind of memory of the field, and this is the surprising thing, too. Even the people that don't, people that have never watched baseball, but that have watched the film anyway, they've come up to me afterwards and said, wow, I'm not a baseball fan, I've never been to Tiger Stadium, but I really loved it. So it's been great to get that kind of reaction. And I've had nobody come up and say, wow, that really sucked. So that was a good thing.
Well, that's good. So kind of on what we're talking, that space seems to just have a real power. Did you really kind of get a sense of that while talking to them and filming, and why do you think that is, that it's such a special place?
Well, I did kind of get a sense of that when I was filming, and I don't know if you know this, but I've never been to a game at Tiger Stadium. I never even saw the building standing. I moved here to Detroit in 2009, and I did see half of it standing. When they'd done part of the demolition, I saw what was left, but I never saw the whole building standing, so I should throw in that qualifier. But I did get that sense of how important the place is just from having the empty fields, not even the place where the fans used to sit, but just the field where all the ball players used to play. And it's just, it's remarkable how many things that are part of our American fabric have happened in that field. And some of the things I had to leave out of the film. I focused on baseball, but the Lions played there for years and years, and they won NFL championships on that field. If you can imagine the Lions winning an NFL championship.
Hard to imagine.
So it's going back a ways. But, I mean, there have been major concerts, rock concerts have been played there. Nelson Mandela came and spoke there. Joe Louis fought there back in the 30s or 40s. So Joe Biden, actually, the Vice President of the United States, just spoke there last year. He came and had a press conference on that field because he knew how important that site was. So it really, I've definitely caught on to how important that is, and I think it's that way because of the historical things that have happened there and how much they mean to the people that go there.
Are you a baseball fan yourself, or a sports fan in general?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge sports fan, a huge baseball fan. I grew up a Mets fan in New York, but when I moved to here, I obviously became a Tigers fan.
So what do you think that this says, just what's happening with that space? What do you think that says about Detroit?
Oh, that's one of the things that I think is the coolest part of the story, is that it shows people haven't given up on Detroit. People still want to preserve Detroit. They want to make it better, and they're willing to sacrifice their own time and money and their blood, sweat, and tears to make that happen. And they're not willing to give up even if people tell them to give up. So I think what more could a city want than people who are that devoted to it? And so I think that's one of the coolest things that's happened. It's a complete grassroots movement. The people that are in the Navin Field grounds crew didn't know each other until they heard about Tom showing up with his mower, and then they said, "This is so cool, I want to go." And a core group of probably 12 to 20 people still come just about every week.
So a lot of them, did they just hear that it was happening, or go to the field on their own and see that people were taking care of it and just wanted to jump in?
Yep. In the early days, it was people just showing up on their own. They saw Tom Derry, who you saw in the film.
Yeah.
He started doing it Mother's Day in 2010. He just said it was right after they buried Ernie Harwell, and he stopped down there, and the weeds are so tall. And he said, "This is not right. I'm going to do something about it." And he got a riding mower out. He came back and started cutting. And then as he showed up, other people heard about it, and they started showing up. And that's how Dave Mesry and Joe Michnook and those guys, the hardcore guys of the grounds crew. And then once they were doing it for a few weeks and months, and then they started the 2011 season, that's when other people heard about it through the media, and they started coming. And over the last 3.5, now 4 seasons that I've been following those guys, there's been significant amounts of media coverage, which is really amazing. Rolling Stone magazine, the New York Times, ESPN, the magazine, ESPN.com. These are big publications, as well as all the Detroit outlets.
Yeah, how did they, I mean, the media attention, everything I've seen was really positive. How did the grounds crew, how did they respond to the media attention?
I think they're really humbled by it. I think, I know Tom would much rather be on the mower than answering questions for interviews. He's just much more comfortable doing that. But one of the things I don't, let me stay on that answering that question. Most of them would rather just make sure the field stays clean. Most of them would rather just keep it than be interviewed. But I think they've come to realize that the more publicity they do get, the better off they are in terms of meeting their goal, because they realize people support them. The politicians might not always support them, but the people always support them. And so getting that message out and repeating it through multiple exposures in the media, that's been really beneficial.
Have you kind of kept up at all with them, or at least kept up with kind of the news happening around the space?
Yeah, I have. We just I just went out to dinner with Tom Mesry and Dave Mesry and Tom Derry the other night, and we talked about the new proposal for the field. I don't know if you've heard about that, but the proposal that the city has finally accepted. They do it after I'm done editing, of course. But maybe I'll make a sequel or something. But the city has accepted a proposal that would preserve the site, sort of. It would preserve the dimensions of the field. They would put up a warehouse. They would put up housing, and they would put up retail storefronts along the outside where the stadium used to stand. So realistically, you can't complain about buildings being where buildings historically stood, right? But
Right.
the dimensions of the field would still be there. The big problem that we have, the grounds crew and I both have a problem with this proposal, which is a multi-use facility, which is great. We want people to be able to do things and do athletic things in Detroit, and we want that field to be used for that. But the big problem is they want to use a synthetic turf and rip out all the grass. And I can just I can picture Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth rolling over in their graves if they were to do that. And the
Yeah,
people whose ashes are sprinkled there rolling over in their literal graves.
yeah, that's kind of a strange. I'm sort of surprised at that, but maybe easier keep up or.
Well, I think their thought is, and to an extent it makes sense, they want to be able to use the field for soccer, football, baseball, and
Oh, okay.
lacrosse. And to have that many teams playing that frequently, it would be very difficult to keep the grass intact, especially when it rains, that kind of thing. The field can get really torn up. So I can understand that to a degree. But on the other hand, do we need all those sports there? Or can we have seasons for each one and just make sure that they play on a reasonable basis and leave it open for the public to go on that that sacred ground where the great baseball players and football players used to play?
You know, and it's great that you brought up how important baseball and that particular where Tiger Stadium stood is to fathers and sons. Did you go into it thinking that would be an important part of your film? Did that happen organically?
No, my initial concept was the little guys trying to fight City Hall.
Right.
But as I interviewed more people, I very quickly realized it was much bigger than that. That was a small aspect of the great history that's happened there, and then understanding the great connection between America's pastime and America's generations, which includes fathers and sons. But I also had a story in there about a mother and her daughter-in-law. So it's not just a male thing. It's men and women, boys and girls, mothers, fathers, grandparents that have been there, and I think that's what makes it special. But that jumped out at me fairly early on.
And did you kind of get a sense as you were doing it, because it seems like that something about baseball stadiums have a very special connection to the cities that they're in, especially when they're in kind of in an urban environment. That kind of come out to you as well when you were doing it?
Yeah, it did, and I kind of have known that for a while. I recognize the importance of historic architecture and historic buildings. Actually, before I moved here, I did a documentary in my hometown of Auburn, New York, about a historic church building, and so I really kind of grasped that concept of the importance of preservation and the importance of architecture and sacred space, again, if you will, if you'll consider the baseball field akin to the church building. But so I recognize that. I think that when you get so many people that are committed to one thing, and you get so many people that share so many memories, they feel like they're a part of something bigger. And I think that does come out as I discuss the sacred elements in the documentary. But I actually have friends in Pittsburgh. When they tore down Three Rivers Stadium, a buddy of mine actually has a section of a beam that was right above where he used to sit. He has his old seats, and he has part of the beam, the girder, that held up the seats above him, where he and his family had carved their names over years and years of season ticket holding there. And they actually, I don't know what kind of arc welding tool or whatever they would need to cut that out of there, but he has that in his basement. His whole house was like a Pittsburgh Steelers shrine. And they actually put his basement into a museum in Pittsburgh because it was so well known.
Oh, wow.
So I know that stadiums have that kind of a connection with people, especially the farther back you go and the more profound memories you have from a certain place, the deeper that feeling is going to be. And I think that is really what resonates with so many people in the film and so many people who watched the film and went to see games there.
I suspect that given time, A similar connection will happen with like Comerica Park. Do you agree with that?
I think that there's the potential for that. I think that one of the really important things with Tiger Stadium was the length of time it was there. Just the number of generations that have been there. Tom Stanton, one of my colleagues at the University of Detroit Mercy, who wrote the book The Final Season, he's interviewed in there talking about how his grandfather came here from Poland and took his father. His father took him. He took his sons, and that's happened with many people. So I think that for Comerica to develop that, it's going to have to stand the test of time and be here longer. I think if it's still there in 90 years, absolutely, I think it'll share that kind of importance in the generations who come after us and the generations that are here now. If it doesn't, if it lasts 30 years like other ballparks, they seem to have a lifespan of 30 years now. If it lasts 30 years, I don't think it's going to nearly have that much importance to people.
Yeah, it's interesting that they, as much as people connect with like Tiger Stadium and Fenway, but they are turning stadiums over much quicker than they used to.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or they are turning stadiums over. That's right. Much quicker than they used to. Like you said, 30 years now is the top. I mean, they seem like ancient.
Yeah, well, look at the stadium, the Edward R. Jones Dome in St. Louis. When the Rams moved to St. Louis, they got that as a brand new stadium, and now they're whining about getting rid of it. It hasn't even been 20 years. I contacted their PR people through friends of mine who know the PR people. When they found out that it was about the old stadium, they just kind of gave me the cold shoulder, which is kind of disappointing because I know Al Kaline and Willie Horton both absolutely love and revere that site, but we couldn't really approach them because they're still with the organization. But Gibby and Trammell were with the Diamondbacks at the time, and the Diamondbacks didn't have that history, that animosity of the fight to save the stadium back in the 90s, which I was not a part of that either. I didn't live here then or even know about it back then. But the fact that they were in the film was really good. People liked it. The Diamondbacks were very happy to set me up with the interview. Denny McClain, I got Denny McClain too. That was kind of cool. He actually came down to the field, and I didn't put it in the film, but he actually threw some pitches off the mound. Cool. And some of his fans came down and watched him, and they took some swings and actually hit the balls that he was pitching back to him. It was kind of neat.
I'm sure it was an amazing moment for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So was there something really maybe unique that you learned or a unique experience that you wouldn't have expected you had while going through this?
I think the thing that kind of caught me off guard the most was finding the ashes there.
Yeah.
And finding that people had literally dumped out or sprinkled the ashes of their loved ones because they cared so much about their loved ones and that site meant so much to their loved ones. That was pretty special. And then the weddings that took place on the field, that was pretty special too. It just shows the importance of that field in people's lives.
Well, thank you for talking to us. Do you have anything else you'd like to add while we're on camera?
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, if you could just everybody who's watched the film, if you could go online, if you're on Facebook, just click like for the Navin Field Grounds Crew. They do love to get people that like their Facebook page. And if you're ever in Detroit, stop down and visit the old field at the corner of Michigan and Trumbull. It is still open for people to walk on that field. You can still bring your glove. You can still play catch. You can still run the bases. Come on down. If you're here on a Sunday, you'll probably meet the grounds crew. But if you show up on a weekday or a Saturday, that's fine too. Gates are open. We'd love to see you down there.